Welcome back to The Pulse. Despite having a huge debt cancellation about a decade ago, Ghana still loses almost 30% of its annual revenue to payments on its external debt alone, and is currently under a 17th IMF program hoping to salvage an age-old economic problem, debt crisis as we know it. In our latest Hotline documentary, journalist Isaac Kofi of course, takes us on that historical ride, tracking Ghana's over 6 decades of ballooning public debt stock.
We're described as not credit-worthy. No creditors will continue to give us credit lines to run the business of government for the nation. And since we had only 4 years to prove that we could govern, we might be worse off than what we inherited. So we decided to go the HIPIC way, and it worked.
Ghana was the second biggest beneficiary of debt relief, literally in the world, though this is a list of African countries. In terms of the proportion of your GDP, and as a proportion of how much debt that was forgiven, Ghana was number 2 on the list of African countries at least. So you see that we had huge benefits from HIPIC. More than $6 billion of money was freed up for us.
The borrowing became a vicious cycle, and Ghana couldn't escape the trap even after debt forgiveness. Ghana discovered oil, and by 2011, the country had started producing and exporting its first barrels of crude oil.
I do not want Ghanaians to think that the oil discovery is the end of everything. That is the end of the journey. If anything, it's the beginning of the journey. We want to make sure that we derive the maximum benefit from the oil, but that should not take away attention from the other very important areas, agriculture. No nation can flourish without a strong agricultural base.
In January 2011, Ghana was set to become the fastest growing economy in sub-Saharan Africa, as projected by the World Bank, with an end-period growth rate of 13.4%. Indeed, Ghana ended 2011 with a growth rate of 14%. By 2015, Ghana's economy was in trouble, hobbled by widening current account and budget deficits, rampant inflation, and a depreciating currency. Credit dried up as interest rates rose, and banks' bad loans piled up.
Precisely because the structure of the economy explains a lot of the things that you see at the macro level and even at the micro level. So that is fine, because essentially we don't add margins to the primary commodities. And look, the world thrives on margins. To the extent that you are not adding margins, you are not getting value, and therefore you don't command price in the market.
After several considerations, Ghana was back to the IMF seeking a fresh bailout. This was our 16th.
But by the time we went to Sinchi and looked at the policies and the rest, we realized, that it was going to be difficult. And then as, was the case, the development partners also decided that, they didn't think we could handle this problem ourselves. They look to the IMF, which is the lender of last resort.
It will be the last time we'll have to go to the IMF again for any such program. This will be the IMF program to end all programs.
One target of Ghana's 16th IMF program was to help restore our debt burden to sustainable levels.
The 16th IMF program actually failed on one of its objectives, which was to substantially bring down debt. So the 16th IMF program really did not do much in terms of bringing Ghana's debt to a sustainable level.
And that's Kofi Eje's work. Fortunately, he's joining us in studio just to talk about this very first part that we're witnessing. And Isaac, very striking memories of our ex-presidents, and we'll be getting to that point definitely where we'll talk about those who are now in power. Yeah. But let's start off with the trajectory. What did this whole journey start off from for the Republic of Ghana?
Well, it's 66 years now, and we've not been able to solve our own debt crisis ourselves. And each time we try solving this, we need a certain external force to come in, which has always been the IMF. So we've been to the IMF 17 times, And when we went to the IMF in 2016, which was our 15th, you saw President Mahama saying this was going to be the IMF program that was going to end all IMF programs. So he was certain at that point in time that that was going to be our 16th and the last.
Right.
But you and I are here currently in the studios, and we know we are currently under a 17th IMF program, and we are probably anticipating an 18th and 19th, and then probably a continuous IMF to I don't know,
right.
It could be infinite.
Right.
But the point is that since independence, we've not been able to solve our own debt crisis ourselves. We've been using this IMF, module and methodology, and it is not working because
right.
on the average, it takes us just 4 years or 5 years, and we are back to the same trajectory. And we are going to the IMF to pick up new loans, go to the IMF shopping mall and say we want this program, we want this program.
Right.
And know that the IMF doesn't really impose any program on any government. You go there with your own program. In 2016, Setekpe and his, Mahama and Setekpe went there with a program they called the homegrown policy.
Right.
They went there with that. And now we've gone to the IMF again with what we call the enhanced domestic program,
right.
which has come with its own haircut. So let's try and see if this will be the last.
I see. And very often, the believers, once we implement the recommendations coming through this adjustment programs and economic reform, we should be on a track for economic recovery. Scientifically speaking, and looking at the data we have, it does work in terms of economic recovery, but we don't play that role in sustaining that economic recovery. So, for instance, the last one we ran, and of course, tipping off in 2018, for instance, the data indicates, and clearly the indication is there, that you see very clearly, as we can see, of course, through the graphs that we have, that indeed our economy peaks at some point once we're exiting the IMF program. That's correct?
Yeah, of course. So it takes us 3 years, and then we are back again. So that has been the trajectory.
When we talk about even the history itself, you've been speaking to a number of persons then going into the archives. What do you sense? Do you feel that this has become more or less a political matter that, of course, is just part of the rhetoric and politicians take advantage of it and make statements as and when they feel it's convenient?
Well, so it looks like as if it's more or less like a fiscal populism where, we have beautiful programs, but the political will to carry, these programs through is always lacking because we've not been able to do it, and that has been the problem. We have very beautiful programs, we draw nice programs with good outcomes, but we've not been able to do it.
And in fact, we'll be getting into the details because as we need to point out clearly, in a few days from now, we'll be bringing you part 2 of that interaction. And while we ready ourselves for that, there's a need for us to first of all look at the trajectory, where we started off from and where we're heading to. Isaac will be giving us a sense of where we're heading to in terms of what to expect next in this very package. Now you're here with us. Of course, many are expecting that part 2 will highlight where we moved on to as a nation, where, of course, the New Patriotic Party administration came into power. We saw the trailer there. Yeah. The vice president pointing out clearly reasons for which he believes we're running an IMF program. What are we to expect in the next phase?
So the part 1 is the genesis. Part 2 is what we call from hero to zero. Because remember, in 2021, Ghana became the trailblazer where, because of our economic, outlook and indicators, we're actually able to get a 0% interest on a certain Eurobond.
Right.
In 2021, we became a trailblazer where all creditors wanted to give us money. But right now, we are actually in a situation where we've been kicked out of that, credit market. Yeah. But we can't go back to borrow from the Eurobond market. But just 3 or 4 years ago, we were the darling boys in the Eurobond market, and everybody wanted to lend to us. So in the part 2, we look at what we call from hero to zero. Right. How Ghana moved from a very vibrant economy with very good indicators to the point where we had to go and beg creditors.
And that's why you're calling that a nation that begs. In fact, we're expecting more of this, and it's just the beginning of the series. So let's start that series with international development expert and associate professor of political economy at GIMPA, of course, dealing with matters of international relations at the School of Public Service and Governance. He's also the author of Reinventing Development, Politics of Aid Reforms and Technologies of Governance in Ghana, published by Routledge in 2016. Professor Lord Malku Yefugan is my guest, joining us via Zoom. Thank you, sir, for your time. Of course, at the time you were putting up this piece in 2016, Ghana was running a 16th IMF program under the Eswell John Dramani Mahama administration. The promise then, as we've seen through this documentary, is that, well, we're not going to go back to the Bretton Woods institutions. But you've tracked that history in your book. Where did it all start off for us? And why would you say is that we have that situation where Ghana keeps going back to the International Monetary Fund?
Thank you, Blessed, and good afternoon to you and your viewers. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Loud and clear, sir.
Yes, so we can argue that the whole history of Ghana-IMF relations started off in 1966. In May 1966, we went to the IMF for support. It was a standalone agreement to support the economy, cover instabilities in the economy after the Nkrumah years. And we were also to help to support us advertise certain state-owned enterprises. Then from that period, almost every year, coincidentally around the same month of May, so 66, 67, 68, 69, we were going to the IMF every year for standby or standalone arrangement to correct anything that we thought was wrong in the economy. Now, remember that, you see, the IMF and the World Bank, these are liberal institutions. I think that point needs to be underscored. So your guest or your colleague in the studio said earlier that the IMF doesn't impose conditions. Well, even if they don't impose a condition directly, they will do so indirectly, because the IMF and the World Bank, these are liberal institutions. As a matter of fact, we call them part of the liberal international order that came into being after the Second World War. So they were set up in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference by the free world, so to speak, led by America. And the idea was to have a liberal international financial system. So we cannot be kidding ourselves. These are liberal institutions. Therefore, their policies are liberal policies: privatization, downsizing the public sector, etc. And remember that from the 1940s to 70s, globally speaking, you have the Keynesian economic system that focused largely on welfarism, so the welfare state. But that all changed because over time, the institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, together with their major countries like the United States and UK, began to accept their liberal policy agenda. And so we need to have this discussion in that context, that these are liberal institutions with philosophical and ideological bent towards the right. Therefore, their policies are policies that will promote liberal agenda. If you compare that to where we were under Kwame Nkrumah, where we were largely state-led, the state was predominant in our economic management. That all changed because when you start going to the IMF and the World Bank for any form of policy support, then the policies have to be liberal policies. So that context is clear.
But while you make that clear to us, of course, the assurance by successive governments, as we've just started seeing, in fact, there's more in the series, we've discovered that each and every government gives that assurance that we will not return to the IMF. At least that assurance has been given on countless occasions. We've seen that in the Kufuor era, the indication was given during the Mills era, briefly, and then, of course, we're seeing John Mahama, who took over, and also pledging at the time that we're not going to return to the fund. Here we are today, and the story is still the same.
Yes, the story is the same because I think more often than not, our policymakers miss out on the political economy. I mean, you don't run countries based solely on econometrics or economic common sense. And that is why we can make predictions and say that we are not going to the IMF, because we are assuming that everything that happens to the economy is within our control. But if you study political economy, which is the interplay of economic forces or economic policy, and political actors and political processes, both locally and internationally, then you begin to appreciate why you cannot sit in your country and make very bold claims that you are not going to the IMF. Because if you look at where we are now, yes, we can have our own internal conversations about mismanagement, corruption, and what have you. But you have to also situate the whole discussion in the broader global context, where we have challenges coming from the broader global economy, including the COVID, including the war in Ukraine. So the interplay of these local and external factors will have implications for our economy. So yes, you can say you are not going to the IMF, but because you don't have control of some of these forces, you may have to
why make the point? Yeah, why make the point that we may have our own policies, but the West, as you're pointing out, would have to dictate to us?
Yes, so because the point I'm making is that if you look at the fundamentals of most economies in Africa and the global south, they are dependent largely on the international system in view of the things that we export, in the things that we import, and you don't have control over these forces. Yes, it is true that if you look at the behavior of all post-colonial or post-independent governments of this country, they've all done some of the bad things in their books in terms of economic management. They are overspent. They get less from revenue and spend more in expenditure. So we have not lived within our means. So that's a major issue. There are issues about corruption and mismanagement, money that cannot be accounted for. These are internal problems that bedevil almost every developing country, particularly those in Africa. But the larger point I'm also making is that we need to situate all these internal forces and causes in the broader global economic system. Because if you go back in history, the reason most countries started going to the IMF and the World Bank was the OPEC. OPEC is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The OPEC oil crisis of the 1970-73, starting in 73, where the OPEC countries unilaterally had prices of their commodities, and that destabilized the market for oil products. And that forced most countries to start looking for means of managing their economic in terms of how do we get money to import fuel. And eventually the debt crisis emerged because most of these countries started to accumulate a lot of debt from getting money from the private financial market. Then we went to the IMF and the World Bank for conditionality lending, and that is the beginning of the structural adjustment. So if you look at it, it is the OPEC oil crisis of the 1970s that actually worsened the plight of most countries and set the tone for the increasing role and influence of the IMF and the World Bank in the economic management of most countries.
Let's look at a milestone, for instance, when we got into the Kufuor administration. And that was a unique turnaround moment for us. Politically, within the country, it was used against the administration. But the HIPIC program was to see a situation where Ghana would enjoy debt forgiveness. And still, that did not work for us.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of windfall from HIPIC. Now, we need to understand HIPIC as debt relief, as it was meant to be. HIPIC was not like they are giving you any extra money per se. It's like the monies you would have been paying your credit. You are now relieved from paying those monies to them, and you should channel those monies to poverty reduction. So that is why one of the conditions for the HIPIC was the ability to have poverty reduction strategy papers, country papers. We need to have that in place as in return for the debt relief under HIPIC. Now, did we manage that? Because our debts were literally written off. But we know we got back again to the bad ways of spending beyond our means. And that, again, created a situation where we had to go back to the IMF and the World Bank. So I think consistently, even when we get a debt wipe out completely, where we have to start from the scratch or from the clean slate, we always find bad ways. And one of the things that has actually happened in the Fourth Republic in particular is the overrun expenditures during election period. And that is something that every government under the Fourth Republic has done, and that has also worked out. So we see that after elections, that the new government begins to look for money from everywhere in order to survive because of our indiscipline in spending money during election years.
And just before we go, in your book, Reinventing Development, you point out how African leaders have not been resilient enough and taking bold decisions and policy measures that will address the problem from its roots. You feel
Yes.
we're still in that situation?
Yeah, and we are in that situation largely because we've been caught up in the neoliberal policy agenda. See, so long as you become dependent on these liberal, then the ability of you to manage your economy from your own point of view is going to be difficult. I mean, if you've come in from the critical side of scholarship, you look at these institutions and ask the question, whose interests and what interest do they represent? Do they represent the interests of poor countries in terms of management of economy? These are global international forces, and they don't account to us. They are not responsible to poor countries, but they are responsible and they are accountable to the financiers. It's not for nothing that historically has always provided the World Bank presidency. The World Bank president has to be either an American.
Sorry, we lost you briefly, Prof, on the point you're making about accountability. If you could just take that point for us. Please.
Yes, you see, I'm making the point that these liberal institutions are not accountable to poor countries. They are accountable and responsible to their major financiers, major Western powers. And I'm saying that it's not for nothing that the World Bank is headed almost always by an American citizen or somebody recommended by the American government. Once the Europeans will choose the director or the head of the IMF. But these are the countries or the regions that control these institutions. And as I said at the beginning, these are liberal international institutions that was part of the liberal international order, the world order that came into being after the Second World War, was to be a liberal order in the image of America. And that's why you hear the phrase, the American president is the leader of the free world, the free world. That free there is all about neoliberalism, liberalization of economic and political system. And that's the agenda of the West. So therefore, if you are an African country, you want to be self-sufficient and actually forming commerce prediction or Africans managing their own affairs, then you have to begin to find a way that makes you less dependent on these international financial institutions that are controlled by the Western government.
All right. We're grateful for spending some time with us. That's Professor Lord Malco Yavuga, international development expert, joining us with his thoughts on the first phase of A Nation That Begs. The series continues, and of course, we're set to get some more analysis on that. Thank you for joining us. Lawyers for Secretary of the defunct Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, Charles Bissiou, are demanding copies of documents forming the basis of the decision by the Office of the Special Prosecutor to investigate him. Lead counsel Nana Ejewa told the High Court he is unable to move the motion asking the court to restrain the OSP unless he receives the documents. Lawyers for the OSP, led by Dr. Isidore Tufo, however, disagreed with this viewpoint. Dr. Tufo insisted there is no relationship between the said document Mr. Bissiou is requesting and the motion for injunction. This legal battle is in respect of investigations conducted by the Office of the Special Prosecutor on the back of the documentary Galamsey Fraud, published by Anas Arimiao Anas. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable has the rest of the story.
That article that pointed them to the fact that indeed someone filed a petition asking the Office of Special Prosecutor to investigate Charles Bissiou. Their belief is that that petition was authored by that being the current special prosecutor who at the time was lawyer for Tiger Eye Private Investigation and Anas Arimiao. And so they want a copy of that investigation, which they believe will enable them to put forward their case as to why the court should not allow the investigation to continue. Dr. Isidore Tufo, who represented the OSP, said that nowhere in the documents that have been filed by the lawyers for Charles Bissiou do they make reference to the fact that they want such a document in order to make their case. And so he says this is purely an afterthought, and that if they have discovered such a document and they want to have access to it, then they know the right thing to do and not to use the back door and all proceedings and say that until they have access to that document, they cannot move the application for injunction. He says he doesn't think that is fair to the proceedings. The judge agreed with that particular view, but said that he was nonetheless going to attend the proceedings because of the fact that the lawyer for Charles Bissiou had indicated that he was unwell. No, Charles Bissiou was not present in court today. In fact, Since this case was filed in December, more than 5 court proceedings, he has not attended any of them, and so he was not present in court today.
And we'll get you some updates and keep our eyes on that story for you this afternoon. We're also taking you to Botiano. There's concern about the police operation within the area, which resulted in the death of 5 persons who the police say were land guards terrorizing residents there. The Bureau of Public Safety is demanding an immediate and independent investigation into the incident, which happened last Thursday. We'll hear from Dr. Nanayaw Akwada on this issues shortly. We would also be taking you to the community where, of course, all of this has happened. My colleague, of course, Bakwisi Shandolf will be giving us some updates here on the show and in our subsequent bulletins. But for now, I want to bring in Dr. Nanayaw Akwada, who's with the Bureau of Public Safety. He's been monitoring developments and the indications from the Ghana Police Service that these were land guards who were subjects or victims of this extrajudicial killing. Good afternoon to you, sir. Welcome to the Pulse. Your take, first of all, on the police account of what may have happened. We've seen similar situations, and it's beginning to raise concerns. I mean, given the fact that we're having a heightened spate of extrajudicial killings. What's the concern really of the Bureau of Public Safety?
Well, thank you very much. I think we had to issue this statement on the basis of the fact that in recent times, if you look at the last 16 months or so, most police actions targeted at gangs or what you want to call organized crime have, all concluded very violently. We've had the police coming out with 5 deaths, 7 deaths, 3 deaths here and there. And we think that we are gradually beginning to see a certain affinity of police operations with dead bodies. I think it is not something that we should encourage in our scheme of things in terms of how the police operate. And that's why we had to issue this presser. Also, we also realized that the police practice of throwing press statements every time they go on operations and results in death, they throw press statements at the public. Respectfully, is not something that we should also encourage. When you go for an operation and people die, it's important that you face the public and answer questions from the public, take questions from the public so that you can clarify issues with the public. We did not see that in the case of Botiano. We did not see that in other cases that have passed in recent past. And we think that it's important that we draw the police attention to it. This will just be my preliminary comments. There are other aspects that border on, trust in the police, the place of the police in our democracy, police operation planning, and things that we will need to talk about as we progress with our interview.
I see. This is beginning to, in fact, question the human rights record of the Ghana Police Service, and yet they won't open up no transparency about the identities of these individuals and whether or not there's actual evidence backing why, of course, they may have been shot. You feel the police should come out on this?
Absolutely. It's the reason why we are here. This is 2023. The police are supposed to be accountable to the oversight bodies and the stakeholders. And we as civil society organizations, as individual or private citizens, the police are accountable to us. So to the extent that the police do not deem it necessary to lay bare the facts to us, they do not deem it necessary to answer questions from us in order to win us over, it is problematic. And that's what brings us here, that the police must be accountable to us in this democracy. We are living in an era of rule of law. The single institution that is tasked with ensuring that the principle of rule of law operates effectively is the police institution. And so if they want to operate under clouds under darkness, without transparency, without accountability, what they are doing is that they are undermining their own legitimacy, which will translate into the legitimacy also of the government. And we will not have a country. We will not have a democracy. And so it is absolutely important that the police hold themselves as accountable to us. It is absolutely important that their practices and their operations are clear with us, the citizens, so that we can be on their side. As it stands now, everybody is skeptical of the police. I am skeptical of police. The Bureau of Public Safety is skeptical of the police. And you from the media just mentioning here that you suspect extrajudicial killing. That is serious. And so the police should not give us any doubt, any opportunity to even begin to think that they have accrued powers onto themselves to the extent that they determine who should leave and who should not. Respectfully, they do not have those powers. The Constitution have not given them those powers, and they should not be seen, exercising powers that they do not have, like we have seen in times past.
The Ghana Police Service has changed this operanda in terms of how they deal with communication, not even a single word to the media ever since this incident happened, and we're not clear if indeed there'll be any public statement on this. Beyond this, there are other stakeholders. There's Parliament, there's also the Office of the Attorney General, who doubles as the Minister for Justice. Your expectations?
Well, I think that the police institution is what it is today because of the lack of proper oversight from the constitutionally mandated oversight bodies that have been created. And I'm talking the Police Council, I'm talking the Parliamentary Select Committee on Defense and Interior. We have not seen any significant action from them in recent times. Why must we have a police force that we use the state's money to procure body cams for them, and yet they go on operations without these body cams? That is criminal. It's not just, if you like, maladministration. It is also criminal. It means you have something to hide, and especially when you come back with dead bodies and come and tell us stories that it's difficult for the individual or the ordinary person on the street to verify. We all saw how the police, after killing 7 people in Ashanti region, went ahead to plant evidence against them. And the police stood by their narrative until an independent investigation body proved otherwise. We have all seen how people arrested, suspects arrested in lawful custody of the police. We've been told how these people were trapped in crossfire and they've lost their lives, and nobody is telling us anything. Where I say, I don't trust the police to do any good job independently unless the oversight bodies, Parliament and the Police Council, will bring the constitutionally mandated authority to bear on the police service to begin to deliver service to the people and not to go about carrying dead bodies about as trophies or performance indicators.
I see.
This is 2023. Dead bodies are not a good sign of policing. They are actually a very bad sign of policing. And totally, Ghanaians must reject this practice of banding dead bodies around all the time as evidence of police work.
It's also bringing up a conversation, and let's be fair to the Ghana Police Service, that, well, they still render service. So for now, we take their accounts partly as well. The concern about land guards terrorizing individuals. It's not new to you at the Bureau, is it?
It's not. It's not at all. And to be fair to the facts, I have been a victim of land guards before, and I know how it feels like for a developer, moving into a piece of land to develop, and you have all these guys coming around, threatening you and frustrating you. It is. But the point is that we must hold the police force to higher standards. We must hold them to higher standards. Are they telling Ghanaians that when they were confronted with this matter and they sat down to plan this operation, confronting them in this manner was the best strategy they could marshal? Respectfully, no. These guys are, if you like, land guards. They are known in the community. And the police intelligence would have led them to knowing these people, knowing where they live. In a single swoop, they could have picked all these guys up, individually, without a shred of blood dropping. Right. So how do you tell me that you have all the powers of the state, you have all the intelligence arms at your disposal, and this was the best way you can, treat land guards? Go in and kill people and bandy them about as though they were trophies. It is unacceptable. And I'm saying that we are not speaking because of Botiano. We are speaking because of other incidents that have taken place in the past, that we are seeing this culture of violence creeping into the Ghana police service, and we must nip it in the bud, that when police operations team goes out, they should not always come with dead bodies. That is not done anywhere. When you go out and come with dead bodies, it is a time for the police leadership, for the operation commanders to bow their heads in shame, because they could have done it other way without getting dead bodies. We are not talking armed robbery incidents where you have to meet armed robbers and face them fire for fire. Even in those cases, we've had the police getting it so badly wrong, they've killed innocent people. So by all means, police modus operandi must be reviewed in this our democracy. Right. Otherwise, all of us, you and I, we are risking our lives as we go about our daily duties, legitimately.
I hope we are all safe, but we'll have to do it here. Thank you.
I hope so too, my brother.
Yeah.
I hope so.
We'll leave it here. Dr. Nanaya Akwada joining us from the US. We talk about the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who's coming under intense pressure to open up about his controversial past, which allegedly makes him a British citizen. Over the weekend, Special Assistant to the Vice President, Gideon Boako, took to Facebook to indicate that, quote, the attention of the Office of the Vice President has been drawn to a malicious social media allegation that the Vice President holds a British citizenship while holding the office of the Vice President, contrary to the laws of Ghana. We wish to state that in clear terms, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, does not hold a British citizenship and has never held any British or any other citizenship other than being a Ghanaian. The allegation should be treated with the contempt it deserves. That's what came through from the office of the Vice President, but there are some other groups that are mounting pressure, asking the Vice President to come clear about his past. Niyama Adi is a lawyer and lead fellow at the Center for Social Justice, joining us via Zoom now. Thank you, Ni, for your time. What more do you want from the Vice President?
Thank you very much. I mean, the issues of dual citizenship has been raging for some time now in Ghana. I mean, if you look at the case of Kyerematen, which has called for a by-election now, it's just a matter of dual citizenship. And for the fact that he went through all the processes to renounce his dual citizenship, yet the court found it palpable to, strike his name off the parliament and to call for a by-election, tells you the extent to which we do not take dual citizenship for granted. And it's right that if you hold dual citizenship, then there are certain positions that you cannot contest for or hold. That's the presidency, the vice presidency, the Speaker of Parliament.
And here's the case. Here's the case that you find. Here's the case that you find the office of the Vice President denying, first of all, the allegations and indicating that he's not held any other citizenship apart from being a Ghanaian. Is that not enough? What more could we do about this?
No. We've all seen the marriage certificate, which went viral on social So that, I mean, as it is, and if it's a matter of law, then you would say that somebody would have to pick up the issue. Somebody must always bring a case before the law. So you say that you pick the certificate, go to where it was registered, and then do the further research. Find out if that marriage really happened. And if it happened, is it a case that it has been cancelled? And if it's cancelled, does that marriage lead to citizenship? If it does, has that citizenship been renounced? Okay, so those things ought to be done. And then once that is done, a prima facie case can be established if he really holds dual citizenship. If that is it, then we can get into the law and bring it before the law. But in the absence of that, we just discuss it as grapevine and speculations and all that.
Right, and many say that's where we should let this lie, given the fact that we're in a political season, the New Patriotic Party is looking for its next leader. Here's the Vice President jostling for the next top job within the governing party. He wants to lead the NPP as its next presidential candidate. You don't believe that there may be some political elements working against him?
I mean, sometimes you also want to look at it the other way around and say that, look, if our vice president is of a very high moral turpitude, then he would say that, yes, I've seen this come around, prove what went detail into it, rather than just saying that the people should leave it to rest. We know that our law says whoever alleges must prove, but it can also go the other way around with a common sense that, look, if I'm being alleged for this, because don't forget that there's always the case for perception. Perception have a huge place to play in this social discourse and all those. So in order to cure that perception, maybe he can go a step further, other than simply saying that it does not exist, to maybe prove how it does not exist. I mean, that makes it very right. But, I mean, albeit, I mean, it is their internal thing, and if there is an internal interest within the party, I mean, who am I to talk for them? They will leave it to them to fight it out for themselves as an internal issue. But I think that if what we saw on social media is anything to go by, then we will probe further. I mean, I think it ought to be probed further to see where the truth lies.
Yeah, but if you're asking for
or whether a case in law can be established.
But if you're asking for a probe, here's the case. That this is the vice president we're talking about. Clearly, and I'm not saying that the Attorney General may not be interested in the case, but given the fact that, of course, knowing where the appointment authority is coming from, the difficulty may be there. How about other institutions, say the Office of the Special Prosecutor and others? Are you considering as a coalition to perhaps petition his office on this matter?
Of course. I mean, the law is no respecter of person. I mean, nobody is above the law. So to say that is the vice president, yeah, the respect person, and nobody is taking him for granted. But if an issue has been established, then why not? So that, yes, a further investigation will be taken. And I can assure you that those searches will go on. And if anything is unraveled that calls for a case before the law court, why not? It will be pursued vigorously.
This whole issue about dual nationality and whether or not we should be allowing such persons to hold political office, it's as though it's an archaic situation that we find ourselves in, a piece of legislation that many want us to do away with. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, for how long now we've been talking about ROPA, and for the fact that our brothers and sisters abroad contribute so much to the economic development of this country, and to deny them, to say that if I'm a Ghanaian and by way of work I've acquired a nationality, or for no fault of mine, maybe as childhood at 4 or 5 years you were taken abroad and you acquire other nationality, and then for that reason you cannot hold certain positions. I think that these are things that ought to be discussed, and I think former President Mahama and the leader of the NDC have said that if it comes to power, these are some of the things that it will open up for proper discussion. And I think that we should do it because it's been on the drawing board for a very long time, a very long time. So it's about time that as a country, we do not just speak, but we must be seen to be manifestly doing the things that we talk about. And one would expect that for a president who is a lawyer, I mean, as we say, would have taken, I mean, a very much interest in these issues and have done with it. And you see, that's where sometimes I have problems. Because when it's a matter of law, then I feel that our president must take a center stage. But when these things are left, I mean, it's quite worrisome. I think that we have to open that vista for proper national discussion, so that if it is the case that we have to put it into practice as quickly as possible, why not? We should do.
Okay then, grateful Niama Adi joining us live via Zoom, grateful. And since you're talking about the former president, I should say, he's now the flag bearer of the opposition NDC, and John Mahama has been calling on Parliament to lead that charge in reviewing the constitutional provisions that prevent Ghanaians with dual citizenship from holding political positions in the country. Former MP for Asin North constituency, James Jachi Kwesing, was stripped of his parliamentary status by a Supreme Court ruling because he owed allegiance to another country contrary to law. Listen to the former President John Mahama, his take on dual nationality and others relating to ROPA.
The party also acknowledges your concerns about participation in elections and governance. Of particular concern to you have been the constitutional impediments to persons holding dual citizenship and the occupation of some positions in government in Ghana. Only a few weeks ago, we suffered what we considered grave injustice when our Member of Parliament for Asin North was thrown out of Parliament by the Supreme Court on grounds that we find entirely unsatisfactory. I've previously indicated that one of the things I will do when elected president in 2024 will be to fast-track the clarification of the constitutional provision on allegiance that bars our dual citizens from holding some offices in Ghana. I call on our Speaker, Honorable Sumana Bagbin, and the Parliament of Ghana to do the needful so that Ghana can benefit fully from the expertise that our citizens have garnered during their sojourn abroad. Another matter which I know concerns you and on which I would like to offer some clarity concerning NDC's position is ROPA. We in the NDC have not been opposed to ROPA in principle. We have kicked against the potential of selective and inequitable implementation of ROPA that lends itself to exploitation by the incumbent party and to the unfair detriment of opposition parties. We have said, and that's the NDC's position, if ROPA is ever to be implemented, it should be implemented for every Ghanaian living everywhere outside Ghana. As far as we are concerned, a Ghanaian living in Europe or America should not have a greater right to vote than one living in Asia or in Africa. We in the NDC will not countenance an attempt or conspiracy between the NPP and the Electoral Commission to implement a lopsided ROPA that favors the NPP.
And back here in Ghana, we know that the Asin North parliamentary election is heating up. We'll deal with these matters, plus the internal race of the New Patriotic Party as the party looks for a next presidential phase. We're joined by some leading faces of the party to discuss the future of the NPP. It's coming up here on The Pulse. Please stay. Welcome back to The Pulse. A bit of an update for you. We understand that the New Patriotic Party has issued a statement indicating that it will be revising its timelines for the upcoming presidential and parliamentary primaries. We'll get the details for you shortly. Also take you to the headquarters of the New Patriotic Party, where, of course, the party is receiving some, nominations because the process started way last week or about 2 weeks ago. We had a number of party supporters speaking up forms on behalf of all of the candidates involved. The live shot you see on your screens now is what's happening as we speak at the headquarters of the governing New Patriotic Party. And because of that, we'll be hearing any moment from now from one of the candidates or aspirants who's vying to lead the New Patriotic Party. I'm talking about Alan Kojo Kyerematen. He's set to address the press any moment from now, and you see some of the leading figures of the party step out from the party headquarters, where I believe it's been subjected to, well, I don't know if it's fair to call it a rigorous vetting exercise. And so we'll be hearing Alan's take after today's vetting. We know that other candidates or aspirants of the party will be going through that same process. So that will be done for a total number of about 10 individuals. The man you see on your screens now is in studio with me. I'm talking about Sami Krapu, once served as a leading figure within the New Patriotic Party, former second vice chairperson of the New Patriotic Party. Thank you so much, sir, for spending some time with us. You've gone under the radar. We've not been hearing from you a lot. But it's good to have you. I mean, we've seen the visuals coming through from the party headquarters. Nostalgia, I believe. I mean, watching all of these activities take place. And it feeds into this broad reorganization that's taking place within the New Patriotic Party. 10 candidates, and you're looking for only one to lead the NPP. That must be tough for you as a party.
That is democracy.
But what's your take on the reorganization? I mean, starting from even the branch level where you started from, you got new constituency level, executives, and then we saw that exercise here in Accra to elect the national executives. Now it's the face of the presidential. We'll talk about the presidential shortly. But your take overall on the reorganization process of your political party.
Okay, you did talk about nostalgia. You know, the last time, I was the one who actually received Alan's forms.
Oh.
As the second national vice chairman.
Wow.
So, nostalgia indeed.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah, the process is very simple. I don't think there's going to be a vetting today. He just submits his forms today.
He's submitted.
Yeah, they accept the forms. They will study the forms.
And then later
they will schedule a date for the vetting.
Okay, so not to cut you, because you know much more about the processes, let's listen in to Alan Kyerematen. I understand he's been addressing the press, so let's listen in.
Of the 8-year term of our executive administration. But whether we succeed or not in reaching our destination on this journey will depend on the choice that the kingmakers of our party make on the 4th of November this year. The choice to select the new flag bearer and leader of our great party. I want to use this opportunity to make a passionate appeal to the delegates who will be voting in our National Delegates Conference on the 4th of November. As delegates, you are representing not only your own interests, but also the interests of the rank and file of our party. What the rank and file of our party are asking for is that they need a new leader who will satisfy 5 basic conditions. They are looking for a leader who will help our party to break the 8 in 2024 and help NPP to succeed itself in power. They are not just looking for a flag bearer. They are looking for a flag bearer who will become president in 2025 January. Secondly, they are looking for a candidate with a record of long service and commitment to our party, and also someone who will seek and promote the welfare of the rank and file of our party. But they are also looking for a candidate who has the vision to move our party forward and modernize our party. They are looking for a candidate who has the competence, the experience, and the knowledge to respond to the critical challenges of our time, which is to be able to create jobs for our teeming youth and to bring prosperity to our country. And last but not the least, they are looking for a candidate who will unify our party so that together we march towards victory in 2024. That candidate who fits this bill is your own brother, father, uncle, Alan John Kyerematen. And I'm using this platform to make a passionate and special appeal to our delegates that if the people of Ghana are asking for Alan to become the next president of our republic. Please make Alan the leader and we'll break the 8. And this is my passionate appeal to you. Thank you and God bless you. Madam Patricia.
So, that is a former.
So you have Alan Kyerematen there making his statement, and live pictures from the NPP headquarters where he's officially now filed his nomination. We know that the processes will follow through as the party has indicated. There's a revised timeline now for the governing New Patriotic Party with regards to the vetting processes, and that will also apply to some of the orphan constituencies. We've just seen that statement coming through from the governing New Patriotic Party. We'll update you on that shortly, but Mr. Crabbe is still here with us in studio, and you've been listening to Alan Kyerematen deliver his address. He's the first to have gone through the process of filing his nomination. We don't know if the 9 others will join to make it 10. But some key statements he's been making, indicating that if the people want Alan to be president, then the party must yield. It's as though he feels he's in the lead already.
Yeah, he is in the lead.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. From where I sit, from the data that I see, he is in the lead. And my data, or our data, is correct because it is validated by the polls that have come out, very consistent. So I know he's in the lead. I know he's the one that the country actually wants, and the country has been asking for. I know that he is the one. So he is in the lead, and it's very important that the delegates actually respond to the nation. Because at the end of the day, we select our candidate, and the nation has to approve. So that's what he's calling for, that the delegates should respond to the nation's.
But I see that he acknowledges that there'll be a step, first of all, starting with the Super Delegates Conference.
Absolutely.
The delegates would have to decide, trim down the numbers, if indeed we're going to be dealing with a set of 10, and then eventually the broader mass of the party. Do you feel that Alan will make it through all these stages?
Oh, definitely he will.
I mean, what's giving you that confidence, by the way?
Because I have the data. I mean,
the data you're speaking to, I don't have that data.
And unfortunately, I can't show it to you. But the thing is that, yes, because I'm crunching the whole thing,
right.
I'm also responsible for operations, like in Greater Accra. I work with Honorable Sylvester Teta, who is the chairman of operations committee, and the rest. So I've been very instrumental in helping to restructure and set and put everything together. And I tested our hypothesis. When we started this all, I just looked at it and said, okay, if everybody is saying that Alan Kyerematen is the man, the man of the moment, then if we go out there setting up the organization all the way to the polling station, we shouldn't have a problem. And we never did. So as I speak with you right now, our baseline is 21% set. And they are going to now bring in the rest, and we have so many months. And in certain places, we even have 5 out of 5 polling stations. So I know what I'm talking about. Of course, it's a snapshot.
Right.
It's always a snapshot. Here's where you are. Things can change. People change their minds. But if we work very hard at making sure that we get these votes out on that day, ensuring that the votes are counted and declared for Alan Kyerematen, he's going to be the next.
Very often, the Alan campaign is being criticized of feeling or of having some sense of entitlement. It's as though you feel, well, it's his turn, and that's the message you've been selling all through, as though there's a natural line of succession, and this is the time.
Yeah, many people feel so. Many people feel that.
But you know the history of the party too well. Your elders say, and I'm sure you've heard from some of them, indicate that there's nothing as such.
Well, then there is nothing as such to them.
Okay.
But many people feel so. So what we're going to do...
That's why I'm asking about your view, because your opinion
my view is that,
critical.
yes, he talks about long service.
Right.
And I think long service must be rewarded everywhere. In any institution, people start from somewhere and they run through the ranks, you know. And so there's so much experience you gather as you go, you know. And he's gathered that experience. You know, Alan has been with this party even before 1992, the formation. Alan was the president of the Young Executive Forum, and his vice president chairman was Mark Menu. Alan was contesting with Kufuor Nanado in 1998 when he stepped down, just so Kufuor, he wouldn't split the Akan front, so Ashanti front, so Kufuor could actually go through. And Alan actually also contested Nana Addo, and he yielded. He didn't want to push the party into, a dire strait. And he served the party. Our first head office at Kokomemle around here, it was the YEF, led by Alan, that provided the office. So he's kind of gone through, and when he was at Emprotech, he helped a lot of our folks. At that time, Rawlings was in power, and there was absolutely no way, if you had the MPP tag, you would even be able to, have a better economy. So Alan was the one who was out there trying to help each and every one of us. So he served. And if people think that it's his turn, then they probably will vote because they think it is his turn. If you think it's not his turn, that's your opinion. And so you vote against the fact that it's not his turn. But I believe that a majority of our people feel that he has served, and so he must be given the opportunity to lead us into the 2024.
How about, the predictions that the dynamics within the party has changed? You've had, for instance, phenomenon faces that have emerged within your own political party. At the time you were marketing him as your vice presidential candidate, he's now the vice president of the Republic. You've sold him to the people of Ghana as the economic messiah. The next elections will be about the economy. The NDC says they are putting their best foot forward. You don't feel that it will be about the economy and that probably the best man you may want to put in for that job should be someone who's spearheaded the economic management team?
Yes, it's going to be about the economy, but there's a difference between an economy and economics. You see, look at all these Western countries, advanced countries. I can't point to anyone with an economist as a leader, but look at the way they built their economies. Economy is about movement, the ability to have people, services move, interact, and create value. So that's what we're talking about. And the economists will go and write about it and analyze the data that you generate. So these are two different things. So if you talk about the economy, we're talking about someone who's actually shown that he's been able to create opportunities for people. He's created a movement, the dynamics that have come together for people's personal economies to change. And we're going to aggregate all of these things and provide Ghana what they want. They want jobs. That's what people want. They don't want people reporting on economic data. They want jobs. And he has shown that he can create jobs. And that's exactly what he's going to do.
All you've shown me is that he's helped Party Faithful.
No, I didn't say only Party people.
Yeah, but you haven't pointed us to concretely what he's done to change the lives of Ghanaians.
For example, Kasapreko. Alan headed Emprotech. And through Emprotech, he did groom and nurture a lot of big businesses you see now in Ghana. So he can see the potential and help put in place the kind of structures and systems, the kind of environment that people need to be able to prosper. If you look at margins, today margins is huge. Margins was nothing, opposite Emprotech. They were just some young men coming up. Alan through Emprotech brought them up. Even as Trade and Industry Minister, you can see what he's been able to do, provide the environment, the African free trade. He did start it as an envoy of the AU, right? Trade advisor. He started it, finished it up as a minister. He's created an environment. Now you have about 5 plants doing different, versions of vehicles. He is that kind of person. That's what we're talking about. Because what we now need is someone who can create the kind of environment for you and I to thrive.
But that's the message you're selling. Others point to the fact that he's been a member of the economic management team. The results are right here staring us in our face. Worst economic performance in the history of the Republic. We've never seen this before.
Yeah, the economic management team is set. So if you're a trade minister, you'll be there. If you're a vice president, you'll be chairman.
Yeah, but he was a member.
Yeah, I mean...
Extolled by the vice president at the time as being a fantastic individual.
Yeah, maybe the bright spots of the economy came from him because he was an amazing member of the committee. But I think it is not too good to look at things from that angle because when you have such institutions, we have something we call collective responsibilities. For example, in this institution, you can go to management meetings, you can opine very differently. At the end of the day, the person sitting at the head of the table makes the decision. The chairman of whatever committee, the board, makes the decision. So the buck will always stop with that person. So I don't want to go in detail and point fingers or whatever, but he was a member of you don't know what went into his
Well, I'm asking that point, and we'll be wrapping up shortly, but I'm asking that question because of, for instance, the new promises making about the great transformational plan. Many say, well, if you had all these amazing ideas, why not give it to your boss at the time, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo? He could have succeeded with the plan.
What makes you think he didn't?
He did?
Maybe he did. And he didn't pursue.
You tell us.
I don't know.
You belong
so you
to
wouldn't know.
team.
The thing is that when you have collective responsibility, people sit down. You never can tell. And there's absolutely no way Alan Kyerematen, me knowing Alan Kyerematen, that he's going to stand out there and say, I dissented here, I dissented there. No. It's a collective responsibility, but the buck stops with the person at the head. He's asking you to make him the head. And when he gets there, hold him responsible. However, in his private life, even as a minister, please check what he did when he was sitting at the table, the head of the table, as minister, the things he was able to do. And then you look at what he was able to do in his private capacity. I've given you 2 examples of the many companies that he raised. So he's telling you that I'm going to transform the economy. I know how to do that. I'm a diplomat, I'm a politician. He's going to deliver that to you.
Sami, let me give you a minute. Speak to the people of Ghana why you believe that your candidate is best fit to lead the NPP. I'm sure your delegates are listening as well.
Well, I believe because at this moment we have issues and problems. Ghana's economy needs to be transformed. It needs to move forward. I think it's a very small economy. You need to have people who have done it before. They've had visions before and they've managed. They've managed the various elements, brought them together, moved them to create value. That is not economics.
All right.
It's building an economy. You don't need an economist to do that.
All right. Grateful, Sami Crab, for joining us. Highways are generally smooth in nature, serving as quick routes for drivers, but that's not the case of the highway from Kaneshie First Light to the Odorkor Waterworks area. There's more in this report for you.
Creamy beverages always delight the tongue. But splashes of the ones on the streets of Accra do not satisfy drivers. Instead, it makes their tongues wag with complaints and endless frustrations.
The situation has persisted for the past 7 years. We've been pleading with authorities, but to no avail. Because of the poor nature of the road, a lot of people have actually lost their lives while crossing it.
But how do these creamy beverages end up on the streets in the first place? Potholes. They are served and produced by potholes, a menace on almost all the roads in the country. Apart from serving what looks like beverages on the streets, potholes also create other embarrassing scenes on our roads. This is not a beach resort, neither is it a spot for relaxation. It's actually a lane on the Odorkor Malam Highway. Unfortunately, the place has now become a resting place for water, as you can see, and anytime it rains, it becomes a severe challenge not only for drivers but commuters alike. Terrible, devastating, and a real pain. These are some of the strong adjectives commuters use in describing the glaring potholes sitting in the middle of some parts of the Kaneshie Malam Highway, a principal road network in the capital, Accra. A brief inspection of some parts of the highway from Kaneshie First Light to Odorkor Waterworks indeed affirmed that the sentiments of road users are not far-fetched, neither are they exaggerations.
But some things need to be said.
The situation is simply an eyesore, posing a lot of unbearable inconveniences for commuters. Some of the road users who spoke to Joy News could simply not hide their displeasure.
Charlie, this one ain't no good, honestly. Every time in less than like 6 months, it gets back to, worse. Yeah, it's really bad. This road originally was very, very good. They came with a certain machine and then they just graded the whole road. And the thing was supposed to fix it some way, somehow. And that's what actually started this whole thing.
It's very bad. And this road, they do the road. I don't know the kind of things they are using to do the road. If they do the road more than 1 month or less than 1 month, then there's damage again. And we are pleading to the government to come and do the road for us.
The cars are not able to move freely here due to the gullies, creating a very awkward situation all the time.
I wonder why authorities can't fix the situation. As usual, they are waiting for a child of a high-profile person to die on the road before they get to work. Meanwhile, if the youth block the road in protest now, they will be questioned. The road from here, that is Kaneshie First Light to Odorkor, has some issues. Authorities should at least tackle some of the issues, even if not all.
Just in the middle of the road at Odorkor Waterworks is a more dire situation. A pool not designed by nature sits openly in the road, created by constant friction between car tires and the road. The effects of the mini swimming pool at Odorkor Waterworks have far-reaching consequences. Ordinarily, road users stand on the last lane, which has now been blocked by water, to board vehicles. But the potholes have compelled them to stand at a much riskier location to get on vehicles. This, they further lament, is worrying.
The water is just destroying the road, creating manholes on the road. The water has also blocked the road, so we are pleading with authorities to promptly address the situation.
The menace is increasingly severe, and the one thing the commuters want is nothing but an immediate solution. For the scores of road users who are not happy with the numerous potholes that have littered the stretch from Kaneshie First Light all the way to Odorkor, their concern is that government must speedily intervene in order to avert the inconveniences that the situation normally poses for them. For Joy News, my name is Pakwesi Shandoff.
Continue to be a part of that campaign. All we need you to do is to hashtag change potholes on all of our social media platforms. So definitely pick that up and read to the rest of the world, or perhaps share them as well to reach out to the authorities. I want to bring in now engineer, of course, Mahama, who's been monitoring all of this, helping us with an analysis and discussions ever since we started this exhibition. Engineer, thank you for spending some time with us. He's, of course, an engineer when it comes to road and building construction. Thank you for spending some time with us. You've seen the latest we've done on the Malam area. I'm sure you're very familiar with the stretch. What do you suspect may be accounting for that, of course, situation that we're seeing in the report?
Well, I'll say a good afternoon to your viewers. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir.
All right. So, fortunately, I was on that road a couple of weeks, I think 2 weeks ago, to do my own assessment on some of the roads we have in the corridor. And I've realized that, the road has actually experienced a lot of flooding. Yearly, when we have even minor rains within the capital, the Kaneshie stretch is not exempted from the remit of or the results of the inundated water on the road. And flood waters is an enemy to our road construction. One of the things I've seen on that road, I observed, was that the road it's old. We think there might be some assessment of the nature of what we call the road condition survey have to be carried out. And remedial works have to be done on the pothole part, all the potholes, and then possibly an overlay, an asphaltic overlay would be ideal, considering the result that will be determined or would be revealed after the road condition survey is done. When you do that condition survey, the expected or the outstanding lifespan of the road will be assessed per the results that you have. What I also saw was that in making it general, I've noticed that a lot of the roads experience floods suddenly after years of construction. Those may be attributed to unapproved structures which are actually put on the water channels, reducing the space or the area of the flow of water. And in that case, you get a lot of water onto the roads. These are all some of the external factors that will affect the road condition. But making it broader, I think some of the potholes that we see on our roads start as a result of the few external activities. You see a vehicle which has a bus tire moving on our road. In fact, you see that the metal wheel we'll be using will go across the road for a very long time before the car will come to a halt.
Right.
That thin line that cut across the road is a source of worry to the pavement integrity. You would have potholes which are done by local guys, especially some of the MPs or the assembly decide to give those section of the pothole patch into their or they're not properly constructed or remedied. It rather aggravates the situation. And I also know that the lack of funds from the central government in releasing to the various assemblies or the institutional agencies like the Department of Urban Roads and the Ghana Highway Authority and the Federal Roads to carry out these pothole patchings on time exponentially increase the deterioration on the roads when they are not done. So let's say if you have a diameter of an area like my palm, a pothole like my palm on one road, segmented across the stretch, and then they are supposed to be remedied like in the first quarter of the year. Before you come in by the second quarter or the third quarter.
Engineer. Right.
Can you hear?
Right.
So it will exponentially increase the effect on the road.
I see. Well, we're grateful for your time here on The Pulse. That's Engineer Muhammad joining us with his take on the latest in our series, Huge Potholes Exhibition. Don't forget that you can be a part of that. Hashtag GH potholes, and we'll also get to see what's happening within your community. The local government ministry, specifically the Minister Dan Boche, has spent today visiting beneficiary metropolitan and municipal assemblies of the Greater Crown Resilient and Integrated Development Project, GARID, as is otherwise known. His mission is to assess the progress of the ongoing desilting works on local drains in the assemblies as the rains are beginning to set in over the weekend. Videos of an astroturf in Nima flooded after a brief rainfall. And that situation is not peculiar to Nima alone. The entire city of Accra and other parts of the country are prone to flooding. And we'll get an update on the local government and ministries today, but we can speak to someone who knows about the work required to end this flooding in the country. Joining us now is Ernest Morgan Aqua, his PR and Corporate Affairs Manager for Zoomlion Ghana. Thank you for spending some time with us. GARID is underway. It's taking us so many years to complete the project itself, but the rains have set in, and many are wondering what exactly the situation, the solution will be at this time. I mean, we've spoken about it, so it's nothing new to you. You know when it rains after 5 minutes, the whole place is flooded. What's the solution, really?
The solution, now we can talk of the have better systems, to have a proper non-flooding area. Each and everyone should know how to hold this waste, because the best way for waste management is to get a receptacle to hold your waste. So when you hold your waste well, it goes a long way in preventing flooding. Also, we can talk of, how do you call it, the planning.
Gone are the
days that when you go to Dansoman, when you go to Tema, the layout was so clear. But now everybody is building. And you go to Glife, the waterway, people are now filling up the waterways just to get the land to build on the land. But definitely water will find its way. So if we don't prevent these things and push on enforcement, we should close our eyes and let the laws work. You know, if we allow it like that and everybody is doing what he wants to do, every day, every year, we will come and we'll be talking about flooding.
And since your company deals in waste, you're talking about that as part of the key challenge that we have as a country. Plastics have been part of the challenge. I don't know if beyond that there is a unique situation that you see with every Ghanaian, a reason for which you are, experiencing this flooding.
Yes, plastic. Plastic is our second generation point of waste, waste that we get in the country. And what we are saying is that now we are putting value on the plastics. I always say that when you see diamond and you can't do anything with a diamond, you see it as a stone and you leave it. But when you see a diamond on the floor, you pick it because you know it's a diamond. Let us put value on the plastics so that we don't leave it anywhere. Yeah. When you go somewhere, they pick the plastics, then they pay for it. So you wouldn't want to leave it anywhere. So that's why we, as a company, Zoomline and the Jospon Group, now what we are doing is we are creating buyback centers. We are buying all the plastics in the system so that we would use these same plastics to produce waste bins, to produce plastic chairs, to produce buckets for us all. So that's the angle that we are going on. We have created recycling plant. We have one at the Kolebu stretch. We have one at Ajay Kotoku. We are also doing the transfer stations so that at least we would use the waste for something better in the system.
But then, when it comes to the attitude or, the behavior pattern of Ghanaians themselves, that will also count, definitely.
Yes, but that's why I talked about the enforcement, because we've done a lot of education. We have Zoom Kate Club, we have gone round, we've done mass media education. I can tell you, in fact, that everybody knows something that he or she is supposed to do concerning waste. But because when they do it, nothing happens. There's no punitive action. So you would do it rather than to go and pay for your waste or to do something. Right. So we are calling that the government should help us to whip small. When we started the whipping, I think things will fall in its place.
And that brings to mind the issue about a partnership with the Republic. You're running, for instance, a new partnership that would deal with some of these situations that we're looking at. Practically, what's the target and what do you seek to achieve working together with the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development?
Yes, so we are in partnership with the Ministry of Sanitation, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Health. But the aspect of enforcement lies solely with the MMDAs. So we as a private entity cannot do the enforcement. It's the MMDAs, with the help of the environmental health officers, they have the mandate to enforce the law. So we can just advise them, we can just motivate them, but they have to ensure that the enforcement is done so that we will all sit up.
Any final message for Ghanaians who may also have to, in fact, it's a national duty now, because if the rains come, the flooding come, it will affect all of us. What's your expectation from the general public going forward?
What we expect from the general public is, first and foremost, to have a receptacle to hold your waste. Okay. And also know the person that is servicing your waste. Most of the times now, most of us are glued in using aboboya. Aboboya is not bad. Right. The informal sector is not bad. But let us know where they are taking the waste to. Some of them will pick the waste from the frontage of your house, deposit it behind your house. When it rains, it push it back to the frontage. You understand? Let us know where they are sending the waste to. That's why we are creating the transfer station, so that at least the proximity to the final disposal site will be short. And we should all be responsible. And if we are all responsible, we will not be shouting on the government every time to help us control the flooding.
Okay, then, and I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. In fact, speaking about what's happened at Botiano, the story we brought to you earlier, we need to bring you an update, a very quick one. My colleague Kwesi Shandoff is joining us live from the community now. Kwesi, what can you report?
All right, we are currently here, and this is a farmland, actually, but we understand that this is the place where the incident actually occurred. We've been speaking to the owner of this farmland, and he says that We've been speaking to the owner of this farmland, and he says that he was not here at the time of the incident. However, it was narrated to him, and he understands what happens. But he says this is a novelty because it has not happened like that before, and therefore he's very much surprised and also living in fear as of now. We have toured the place, and clearly there are no visible signs of exchanges between police and the alleged land guards as had been reported. But generally, the place looks like a ghosted town because the residents, I mean, many of them have decided to move indoors. You cannot see them. Many of them would not also want to come out and interact with us for fear, I mean, arising, of course, out of this particular development. But so generally, it's not a calm and peaceful climate here, if I should put it that way. The only person who has bothered to interact with us, even with that, on the grounds of anonymity, is the owner of the farm where the incident happened.
Chandler giving us the latest from the Botiano community, where there was some recorded case of extrajudicial killings. And that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sugan. Log on to myjoyonline.com. Updates there for you. Lots of stories for you to catch up on. We'll see you again tomorrow. From us and the team here. Next is Lex Showbiz. Thanks for watching us. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.